all leaders, and if we're all leaders, and we all have influence, at some point in our lives, we will be wounded by the way that we are showing up in the world. And so I think that we all are walking around with some type of wound. Maybe it was like me that I was told I was too much and needed to kind of tone it down. But I've also heard the flip side of it, of you're too quiet, and you have things to offer, but you seem disconnected. And so you are not showing up as your authentic self. And so I think our leadership wounds come in all different shapes and sizes. And if they go unhealed, we then begin to wound other people. The most detrimental leaders out in the world are the ones who have been wounded and have not healed from those wounds.
Let me get this set up here. Hello, and welcome back to Rediscovering You, episode 75. Today, I'm so excited to introduce to you Amanda Rohrer. Amanda is a leadership and embodiment coach, pastor, and host of the Leadership Wound podcast. With over 25 years of leading people into transformation, she creates safe and transformational spaces where individuals can release what no longer serves them and move into greater clarity, confidence, and purpose. Amanda, I'm so excited to have you here today. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. I'm excited to be here too, Laura.
Yeah. So, when I first heard about your work as being a leadership and embodiment coach, these were terms that I actually hadn't stumbled across before. So, I'm wondering if you could just start by defining what a leadership and embodiment coach really does.
Yes. Well, I'll just break it down into maybe two pieces. The first, leadership. I think that we all are leaders because my definition of leadership is the ability to influence others. So it doesn't matter what role we find ourselves in, whether we have a title, a position, or get paid for it. We are all leaders. And so my background is in pastoral leadership. That's where I professionally was for about 25 years in the ministry, leading and coaching other people. And this embodiment piece was a new word for me as well. I definitely had to look it up, but I love it so much because to me, embodiment means that the internal comes outward. So
Mm.
we all have truth or things that we believe inside of us or in our heads more so, but it doesn't necessarily come outwardly. So our internal doesn't always become what is our external. And so we have this fragmentation of ourselves that we say we believe one thing or we want to be one thing, but we're not living that way. So
Mhm.
embodiment for me means that who we are, how God has created us to be, the beliefs that we have, our truth actually come out into the external world, into our actions and how we live and breathe. And so embodiment is an important word for me. It's actually how I help people and coach people into pausing, returning, and then embodying what they believe is to be their authentic self. Because it doesn't do us any good if it just stays inwardly. We don't want to have a dissociation between who we think we are and how we show up in the world.
That's such a beautiful explanation. And I'm wondering if this was something that you experienced in your own journey of living in a disconnect and feeling that you weren't embodying what your truth is. Is that something that ever occurred in your own journey?
Yes, for sure. And I don't think I had words for it until I sought my own leadership and spiritual director slash coach myself. So it's
Mhm.
been a journey for me, I would say, over the last probably 10 to 15 years of beginning to understand who I am authentically and not having the disconnect. In my own leadership journey, I was often told that I was too much, too loud. What are we going to do with Amanda? And so I learned to kind of squelch myself and squelch my giftings. And
Mhm.
yet I still had them, but I wasn't embodying them. I was afraid to show up in the world as them. And
Mhm.
so I've had my own journey over that 10 to 15 years of learning how to embody the truth that I know of who God has called me to be. And now I have this just overwhelming desire and mission to help the next generation of leaders also to embody their most authentic self.
Yes. And I think it's so important for leaders to be able to do this work. And I love what you said at the start of this episode is that we all are leaders. You don't have to
Mm.
be the CEO of some big corporation. We all have leadership qualities. And I was hoping you could talk a bit about like what are some of the narratives or the negative self-talk or messaging that a lot of the leaders you've helped over the years have come to you?
Yeah. Well, that's a great segue into why I named my podcast The Leadership Wound, which some
Ooh.
people are like, why are you naming it this? Well, I believe that we're all leaders, and if we're all leaders, and we all have influence, at some point in our lives, we will be wounded by the way that we are showing up in the world. And so I think that we all are walking around with some type of wound. Maybe it was like me that I was told I was too much and needed to kind of tone it down. But I've also heard the flip side of it, of you're too quiet and you have things to offer, but you seem disconnected. And so you are not showing up as your authentic self. And so I think our leadership wounds come in all different shapes and sizes. And if they go unhealed, we then begin to wound other people. The most detrimental leaders out in the world are the ones who have been wounded and have not healed from those wounds.
Is
Have
such
not.
powerful truth.
Yes, yes. In fact, that's why I actually created a whole signature coaching package around healing that leadership wound so
Mhm.
that we can actually acknowledge and feel it. Sometimes we do things like buffering, which was a
Mhm.
word I never had heard before until I got into some of this work, but we all do things in order not to feel our feelings, the pain. And so we buffer, we eat, we shop, we scroll, we do other things other than be present with ourselves and
Mhm.
how we are actually feeling. And so part of that journey of healing from that leadership wound is feeling what is actually going on, acknowledging it, and then naming it,
Mhm.
and then moving from not just naming it, but accepting it. And accepting it doesn't mean that you are saying what happened to you was right or good or meant to happen, but we often need to accept the state that we are in so that we can move into the journey of healing from it. And so there's all kinds of leadership wounds out there. Often they show up in the form of like exhaustion
Mm. Mhm.
because we are trying to perform like someone else. Like someone else kind of handed us a script and said, this is how you're supposed to be or show up or live in the world. And we're exhausted from being something other than ourselves.
And that's it. It just keeps coming back to you need to be who you are authentically, and only you can be the one to decide that. And a lot of us, when we try to act as leaders, like you said, we're too loud, you're too bossy, you're too whatever it is, too much. And so
Yeah.
we internalize that. And so that's like the disconnect that happens, is what it seems like. And I
Mhm.
agree with you. Like a lot of people are so afraid to feel the feelings that are difficult. So they'll do anything. They'll do anything to
Yes.
avoid it. And when
Yes.
you don't look at your feelings truly and sit with them and not try to like fix it, but just really sit with it and accept that this is what it is, it's
Mm.
so hard to move forward.
Yes, yes. And my go-to was always there must be something wrong with me.
Mhm.
So when the external world, this external validation, that's another thing we could talk about. But when I'm not receiving external validation for who I am, because I'm looking outside of myself to receive that, I get all flustered and upset because it's not matching, and I'm not getting the applause or whatever from it.
Yeah.
And so I have to really work hard at pausing and asking the question, who am I looking to tell me who my authentic self is?
And it should always come back to you. Always, always, always. And it sounds so simple, right? But it's a hard lesson. I think so many of us in society are just socialized to look for approval in all these different places. Am I doing it right? Do you like me? Am I approachable? Like, how could I do things differently? But that's so negative, and it is wounding. It really, truly is. And my own personal journey and rediscovery and stepping into my authentic self, it's just been so liberating to not care what other people think the way I used to.
Mm,
Like,
yes.
truly.
Oh my gosh, yes. I like to kind of practice something I say of like I pretend that there's only an audience of one, and that audience for me is God and me together. And
Hmm.
that what if I made a decision and when I went to go make that decision, all I looked at is my audience of one? What if there was no one else? And I try to ask myself, what kind of decision would I make if I wasn't trying to please, perform, seek approval? It's not that people's perspectives isn't important, and wisdom would cause you to look at that at times. But if we're using that as an excuse not to show up as ourself, as our
Right.
authentic self, then external validation is what is dictating who you are, what you do, how you do it, when you do it.
Hmm.
And we're all guilty of that, especially in a society that values instant gratification.
Hmm.
This is a journey I constantly have to learn about instant gratification. Something happened to me today, and I didn't receive the answer I wanted, but I'm pretty sure that it will happen. But I felt like the Lord said to me, "This is an opportunity to exercise your muscles of confidently waiting patiently."
Yes.
Because we are so much wanting instant gratification, and our first nature is to want it now, to see it now, to feel it now, versus to pause and to reflect. And because pausing means we have to sit in silence, and
Mhm.
sitting in silence means we have to at times do battle with what's going on up here. But when
You have
we
to allow
do
yourself to
that,
feel the feelings too,
yes,
right?
feel the feelings.
Yeah, you're right. We are in a society that just is all about instant gratification. And when we don't get it and it doesn't feel good right away, we don't get that hit of dopamine right off the bat. We're like, oh, huh, I don't love this. So, like, we just are afraid to keep doing the thing or sitting with that uncomfortable sensation, even though that's exactly what you need to be doing a lot of the times, is to be able to
Yes,
grow your capacity for discomfort so
yes.
that you can continue to expand and evolve in your own personal rediscovery and evolution.
Yeah, I always tell my kids if you are not uncomfortable, chances are you probably are not growing.
It's so
Um,
true.
it's so true.
Yeah. Seriously, think of anything in your life that you've had to do or learn. It always kind of sucks at first. It's uncomfortable and weird and awkward most of the time, unless, at least that's been my experience when I try something new. But you got to
Yes.
do it anyway.
Yes, and getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. If
So
you're
true.
willing to do that, then you will go far if you are able to do that because you have the capacity to stretch and to grow. I remember my spiritual director often would talk about this capacity just to grow and grow and grow and hold whatever it is.
Hmm.
And that is a gift. But to be able to do that, you have to have a solid standing in who you are. For me personally, it's who I am in Christ. And so if I can stand there, holding hands with Jesus, me and him are one with who I am, then I'm able to hold the capacity. But if I waver at all in who I am, I get nervous, I get scared, the instant gratification comes in. I'm not getting that dopamine hit, like you said, versus just sitting and pausing. And so for me personally, this season of life is all about the pause. I'm an empty nester and I
Mm.
have a lot of time on my hands and I'm raring to go. And God's like, no, this is your season of pausing and waiting because I want you to learn how to grow that capacity.
Right. And it sounds like you're just also strengthening your intuition muscle of being able to know
Yes.
that, like, this is not meant for me to be a go, go, go right now. I'm needing to just pause and reflect and being so confident and true with who you are at your core, I'm sure is helping support you through this process.
Yes. And being around other coaches like you, Laura, and other people learning how to trust your intuition. I don't think we do enough of that. I don't think we do enough of that. I remember going through seminary and learning all kinds of things. And the one thing I definitely wanted to learn was how do I learn about my own voice? How do I learn to trust my own voice? What does my own voice look like in leadership? What does my own voice look like here? But more so, I felt like I kept hearing, and a lot of it was my own self-sabotaging, like critiquing myself rather than being very compassionate about where I am and knowing who I am and moving from that place versus I probably look to the external.
Yeah.
to dictate who I should be versus looking at the internal of who I should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been part of my process as well because the answers, I know this sounds cliche, but I'm going to say it anyways, but the answers truly come from within. And the more that you know that to be true to your core, the happier I've been, the better life has been for me. Like things just get better.
Yeah, because who goes with you everywhere? It's you. I
Just like,
know. Like, if we could just realize it's not the job, it's not getting to the next goal, it's not
yeah,
seeing the vision fulfilled. No, it's being comfortable in your own skin because no matter where you
yeah.
go with you.
Yeah, so you better like yourself because
That's
you
right.
better
That's
like the
right.
company you keep.
Amen. Yes, yes.
Yes, yes. So can you talk a little bit about like what is the type of person that you just love supporting and working with through your coaching practice?
Yeah. So at the beginning, I didn't really know this, but what I'm finding is that I love to work with the next generation of leaders, those within their
Mm,
P's and P's that are just beginning to put into practice some good, healthy rhythms. And the reason why they're doing that is because they realize, oh my gosh, I don't think I'll be able to do what I'm called to do
mm,
if I don't. I just talked to a young leader the other day, and they were just recognizing how they could be showing up and performing rather than being their authentic self. And I found myself saying, oh my gosh, you're so early on in the journey. This is the perfect spot for you. And I think this generation is desiring to show up more authentic, more transparent, more vulnerable,
mhm,
more honest and authentic. And I did not learn these things on my own. I had coaches, spiritual directors, mentors, friends, colleagues along the way who helped me. And so my ideal client is someone who is hungry for that. They just don't know exactly where to go, but they want someone to journey along with them
mhm.
in the journey. I found myself also around some entrepreneurs, which is kind of exciting as
Yeah.
I myself am venturing into that sphere. Just, yeah. So I'm loving the idea of working with leaders who have faith as part of their DNA,
Hmm.
and then wanting to add spiritual practices into their leadership and how to be authentic. But definitely not just in leadership, but in living. I don't know if you found this out for yourself, but you can't show up as two different people. And you're leading, they go hand in hand
Yeah.
because people can spot a fake a mile
Oh
away.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So if you show up as one person here and you're showing up as another person here, at some point they're going to collide, and the
Mhm.
people who are called to follow you will know that. And so that's also one of the things I desire to work with is somebody who's interested in integrating them, a holistic. So I don't just offer leadership strategies. It's the holistic embodiment.
Can you paint a picture of what it would look like for somebody who starts working with you in the very beginning of their journey, as you just described, to what they're able to accomplish and the changes that they have been able to integrate into their ways of lives after having spent time working with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think somebody who first comes is noticing that something is not right. Often it comes in the form of exhaustion because of what I have talked about the disconnect. They're feeling burnt out, and wondering why. And so they're also coming and asking the question of like, what's my why behind what I'm doing? If they're at the point of burnout, they're probably asking themselves, do I need to change directions, a different career or something like that? And sometimes that could be, but sometimes it's just a matter of integrating your whole self into what you're doing. And so we begin to just first look at the why. If your why isn't strong enough, it won't enable you to go through what we said, the uncomfortableness of
Mhm.
changing the rhythms. And so in my coaching sessions, I like to use a framework of metanoia, which is to change your thinking. And so I have three different practices that we do each session. The first one is to pause. So we pause and we recognize, what is present within us right now? What am I dealing with right now? And then we move into the return, which is what is the invitation that I have been given to return back to my authentic self. And so in that return section, we often do a little bit of teaching, maybe about the true false self, maybe about external validation, maybe about discernment, clarifying that why a little bit more. Why do I want to move into my authentic self? And then we go into the embodiment of taking what the return was, who am I supposed to come back to? And
Mhm.
we actually embody it with an action. Maybe it's as small as I'm being called to write down my thoughts.
Mhm.
Journaling has been something that's been life-giving to me. It's not for everyone, but maybe something else. Maybe it's I need to have a phone call and talk with someone and be a little bit more authentic with my
Mhm.
yeses or my nos or how I'm feeling. Maybe the embodiment looks like I need to change the rhythm of my workday. I was talking to someone recently who discussed about how they need to change a little bit of the rhythm of their workday to accommodate more who they are. So there's this embodiment at the end. So we solidify the return with actually taking what's in our head and actually putting it into practice, right?
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so at the end of the journey, the hope is that we have done 12 sessions of pausing, returning,
Mhm.
and embodying, that it becomes a habit that we do
Mhm.
throughout our whole day, our whole week, month, then just becomes a whole year, and all of a sudden, our thoughts that are going on in our head, the stories that we tell ourselves are more true and truer to our authentic self. Yeah, so that's a little bit of the journey.
I love that. I really do. And I love that. And it's like you're also empowering them by guiding them through your 12-week process to be able to learn the skills so that they can feel comfortable and confident leading themselves. See how I did that? To do it on their
Yes.
own when they're done working with you, which is
Yes.
fabulous. Because that's at least, one of the hopes I have for my clients as a coach is like, I don't want you to rely on me forever and ever. I want to teach you. I want to get you to where you want to be and then spread your wings and fly. Go do
Yes, so that
it.
they can coach themselves. I
Yes.
actually did a whole podcast series on the hardest person that you'll ever lead is you.
Give me the Cliff Note summary of
Oh
what is
my
that
gosh.
about?
Yeah. So the hardest person that you will ever lead is you. We often think that our job as leaders is to lead other people. In fact, as a Jesus follower, God never called us to be leaders. He called us to be followers, following after our apprentice, our God, our Father. And if we can't do that ourselves, who the heck is going to follow us? But it's difficult because you have to learn to have self accountability. You have to learn how to put accountability practices into your own life and accountability people, which is what we do as coaches, right, Laura? We're focused on forward thinking and we want to have a safe container of accountability. And you need that along the way because if you want people to follow you, you better have gone there first.
Yes,
Missing it.
absolutely.
You
Yeah,
don't have to be perfect. You do not have to be perfect.
right.
Perfection we throw out the window.
Doesn't exist. Yeah.
No, I just
Yeah.
heard something the other day that like perfection is a stopping point, but excellence is a continuation. Like perfection, you arrive. I was like, oh my gosh, phew, like a mind
Yeah,
blown
I
for
love
me. I did
that.
never thought about it that way, but it's so
Yeah.
true. If you're seeking excellence, you are seeking a continuing. Like you
Right.
just continue to grow and grow and grow versus perfection is a stopping point.
Right. Like I've learned and done everything that I can.
Yes.
Like,
Done, checked it off
no.
my list. And
Yeah.
so we never get there, right? We never get there. And so we're discouraged. So
Hmm.
it's like we got to get rid of that. That's not even a goal.
Right. And excellence for you in your given moment as well, to have some compassion for, like my best on one day is not the same as my best on a different day. And like have compassion for yourself too. Regard.
Self-compassion, we could talk about that, couldn't we?
Oh yeah.
How do we do that? We need to do self-compassion much more. I recently had a session with my coach, and what was mind-blowing to me as I went through it, what unearthed was that I was so concerned with perception and what other people were saying or being
Mm,
critical. And what I realized was that I was my own judge, that I was self-sabotaging myself. And of
Hmm.
course, that's the shame comes in, that there's something wrong with me. And I didn't even realize that I was allowing myself to be a hindrance in the process, and that
Hmm.
I was shaming myself for something particular, but that I was my worst critic. And she helped to guide me through the process of course you felt that way. Of course you were doing such and such. This was the story you were told, and I was being so critical of myself versus having self-compassion.
Right. Because there's really nothing positive that I found that can be gained by being overly self-critical. Like prevents you from wanting to stretch yourself or try different things, and you just get into this negative loop, and it's not productive. And then
No,
when you can switch to having compassion for yourself, almost like, and this is where inner child work kind of helps really too. Look at yourself and have compassion for yourself and your journey as you would like your childhood self. And like, yes,
yes.
there's going to be mistakes and areas for growth always along the way. And that's just part of our own evolution. People think that like, okay, when a child becomes an adult, like, okay, we're good. Oh, like we are always learning and growing until our last breath, and that should be just the norm.
It should be the norm because we're humans, right? We're
Mhm.
humans and
Yeah.
we grow. And
Mhm.
the more we can see ourselves in that way, yeah, we kind of have to dissociate and look at ourselves and say, okay, if I was coaching this person,
Yeah.
what would I say to them? I would say, well, this is completely normal. No
You wouldn't be
wonder.
like, what the heck? You messed up again? Really?
I
Like,
know.
no. Like, so why do we talk to
Right.
ourselves like that?
Right. And I think when we have that language of, I think it's language of shaming ourselves,
Yeah.
that there is something wrong with us. And when we do that, then our judge and our critic comes out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's just such powerful work that you're describing that you're doing in order to help people. And I love that you said you like starting with people as young as in their 20s too, because like the things we're talking about right now, I wish somebody talked to me
Yes.
about this when I was in my 20s. I was like, how much grief could I have avoided and how much more like it's just the earlier we can get to people that are aspiring, especially to be leaders and to live a more authentic life, the earlier we can get to them, like, awesome. That's great.
Yes. 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 And I think this generation is probably hungry for that because they
Yeah.
see how leaders are falling and the pitfalls that they are going through, that they don't want to do that. Yeah. And I think a lot of it has to do with renewing our minds and our thoughts.
Mhm.
What are the things that we are thinking?
Yeah.
Because our thinkings drive our actions.
100%.
Yeah. And
Yes.
our thinkings, the things that we ruminate on, are also generating and creating feelings.
Huh? Yeah, I think, and again, like that's something that it sounds so simple when you say it, but it's so profound is that our thoughts are literally so incredibly powerful.
Yes.
They can create diseases, like that's
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
powerful our thoughts can be. Our
Yeah.
thoughts create our reality, both our external reality and our internal reality. And we have control over our thoughts. And when we learn
Yes.
how to manage them, it is just such a game changer. It's been so just eye-opening in my own life. And I've seen it with other coaches that I work with and clients that I've helped support along the way. When we learn to take control of our thoughts, like that
Mm.
is magic.
Yes, and that is definitely something that I did not learn. I would say that is something that's more newer over the last couple of years. I mean, a big scripture is, the Apostle Paul talks about renewing your mind. But this whole thought of taking, I mean, and also you could use the scriptures of like taking captive those thoughts, but
Mhm.
actually taking those verses and putting them into play into your actual daily life of like taking what am I thinking right now? What am I making this experience mean by the thoughts that I'm thinking? That's what I was never taught. And I feel
Yeah.
like that is life changing.
It really
It
is.
really
It's
is.
like I can't stress it enough. And when you start to honor that, you're being more embodied too, as you say, because you're
Yes.
putting into action, the correct thoughts and that's becoming who you are.
Yes. Yeah. And it creates like, so in my journal, I try to every day, what are the feelings I want to be generating? I want to be confident. I want to be content.
Hmm.
I want to be joyful. Okay. Well, what are the thoughts that I need to be thinking that are going to be producing them?
Yeah. That's so true. And it's so funny you mentioned that. I did a very, very similar practice myself when I was, looking at a crossroad in my life, thinking about what was my next step move. And I wrote down the feelings that I wanted to have, the feelings. And I think some people underestimate or maybe never were taught that that's a really important part of the process of manifesting your goals is that you need to associate the feelings that you will have once you are living that life. And then once
Yes.
you have the feelings, the actions and the thoughts will fall into place.
Yes, yes, yes. I could not agree. Yeah, even more. I mean, we're all looking for an experience, an encounter. We we want to show up in the world in a certain way, and that has less to do about the external and more
Mm.
to do about the internal of who
Mhm.
you are and how you are showing up in the world. I had to start giving myself permission, to be honest with you. Like, so let's say I wanted to feel confident or content. Well, I looked externally for that. I
Mhm.
need this to happen or that to happen, and then I'm going to be okay. I kept looking outwardly. And
Mhm.
when I began to think, no, wait a minute, I can give that to myself.
Yeah.
I can give myself contentment by, okay, what is the goal that I want to achieve? Well, what are some of the things and steps that I can do in the process to get there? And
Yeah.
as I did those things and thought like the person who was going to be out there, then it was easier to achieve those actions or goals. And because I was showing up as that person versus
Mhm.
showing up as the discontent or the unconfident
Mhm.
person.
I
Yeah.
love that. And yeah, you can decide what you want your emotional state to be. You really can. Even if you're
Yes.
in the most dire of circumstances, you have the complete power to choose your attitude towards the situation that you are in.
Mm.
And yeah, like every situation, there can be something positive gleaned from it. And depending on how you look at it, a lesson that you learn, a strength that you grow. And then in knowing that, you do very much have the ability to change your emotional state. And the more you
Yes.
practice doing this, the quicker and the easier it.
Yes, and that's key is the practice of it, the
Yeah.
continuing to do it. Yes. And that is part of the rhythm that I hope to accomplish in a coaching session when we talk about the pause, the return, and then the
Mm,
embody. Because the more you do that and associate thoughts with those things, when you're talking about embodying, practicing the thought is a big piece of that. And the more that you do that, the easier it comes. And it's awkward in the beginning and
of
it feels
course.
weird, but then you're like, "Oh, wait a minute. I control my internal peace. I control my peace, you know?"
And as we said, like full circle moment there, it's going to feel awkward in the beginning because you're trying something new, you're stretching yourself. So, of course, it's going to be uncomfortable. If it wasn't uncomfortable, you're not going to grow.
That's right. That's right.
Bring it back.
That's right.
Amanda, you just have so much wisdom that you are spewing right now. I'm loving it. If
Mm.
listeners are intrigued and want to work with you or learn more about all the things that we're talking about, how can they get in touch with you?
Yes, the easiest way is just to go on my website, authenticleadershipcollective.com. You can go on there, and as soon as you get on the website, there is a place for you to sign up for my weekly email. You can get like a starter kit for authentic leadership, authentic living and leading, and you can get on my website. And then I also have a tab for book a free call. So I offer a 30-minute free call just to begin to discover maybe one of my coaching packages that could help you begin to live and lead more authentically. So, easy ways just to go right on the website.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. And I will definitely include all of those links in the show notes. As we close, I want to just pass it over to you. Do you have any final message for our listeners today?
Yeah, I think my final message would be don't try to do this work alone and don't try to figure it out. Have a coach, have a partner, have a spiritual director, have somebody journey along with you because
Mhm.
half the battle is being self-aware. And if you're like me, I have blind spots and I need someone else to kind of mirror for me what I am saying. And it's when we actually get the stuff out on the table that we're able to decipher and move into more of that authentic self. And so that's my biggest plug is to find a coach because investing in yourself has dividends for the rest of your life. The return on investment when you pour in time, your heart and soul, your finances into yourself, you will see it and it will affect other people.
I couldn't have said any of that any better. Yes to all of that. Words of wisdom from Amanda Rohr. Thank you so much for your time on the podcast today. It has been such a fun conversation with you.
Yes, thank you so much.